This breakout session is about mobile-based data collection tools for program monitoring and evaluation. In this session, we will learn the experience from the point of view of 3 different types of users. One of them is from IFAD experience. Another one is WFP, and the third experience is from the Open IT ICT solution integrator. First of all, I would like to present my colleagues. We have Mr. Dieffi Tchifou Miltiade. He is a general manager of Open IT. He has a master's degree from the University of Yaoundé, Cameroon, in networks and multimedia application. And he specialized in networks and multimedia development tools and data collection analysis for development agencies. Mr. Wael Attia, he is the lead information and knowledge management officer at WFP. He joined the WFP in Rome in 2004, and he's in charge of the continued development of innovative, robust, and secure information technology and solution. Our colleague from IFAD is Mr. Pelrine. He is the regional economist in the West and Central Africa division of IFAD, where he is responsible for the analysis of economic trends and strategic planning for IFAD's investment. And before joining IFAD, he was in the private sector, in the banking sector. So also, he is a great input to IFAD, as it is, and he built his experience from the private sector. Okay, so we begin, and I give the floor for our first presenter, Mr. Dieffi Tchifou.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to present to you on this session the tools for mobile-based data collection, the process, and some case study of a project we implement in Cameroon. Thank you. We all know that reliable data is very important for evaluation. And the data historically have been collected from papers. And with the emergence of ICT, we see an opportunity to increase the reliability of data. And we work in Cameroon on projects like surveillance of epidemiology, cholera in the far north of Cameroon. And I was in charge to design a survey for mobile in that area. What we are going to see today is what are tools for mobile data collection, how mobile data-based collection works, how mobile data can be better than paper-based data collection, the principle of design a survey in a developing country. for mobile-based data collection, we need both equipment like computers for design and extraction of data, smartphone or mobile phone for data entry and transmission of data, and servers, sometimes for storage of data, and software for design the survey, for data entry, and for data extraction. For example, for design, we can use MX Excel. We can also use tools like iForm Builder. All these for iForm Builder, XML form offline are free tools available on internet. For data entry, we use Odica Collect, Kobo Collect, or there are so many, like CTO Survey also. For extraction, we have ODK Aggregate. We use in our project Gamu SMS. It's a software for extract SMS data. How do that work? The process for mobile-based data collection is not too different from the paper-based. The difference stands from the tools and the means to render the data. So the design of the form is the same. We need to design the paper form and to convert into digital form. After all this, we use a tool like XML form to translate the paper, the paper form into the digital form and to put it in a smartphone. Afterwards, we entry data from the field and send it into central server by SMS. The first step is to convert paper to digital. We use for this, Excel to enter various questions, and we transform the Excel files into XML file that can be readable by a smartphone. When the form is transferred into the smartphone, in the field, we have a form in the smartphone that we can entry data. Afterward, the data is sent to a server by SMS. And it can be by SMS or by internet. But in our country, internet is not available in all areas. So we have to use SMS because mobile operators are present everywhere. So we use SMS to transfer the data to a server. What is the difference between mobile-based data collection and paper-based? With the mobile-based, the data is available very quickly. So we don't need to transport a paper from the remote area to the central agency. The data is transmitted via SMS directly. The accuracy of data. With paper-based, we have the person who entry data, who is collecting data, write it on paper, and after we have to entry data to a computer. This is one level where we can have errors on transcription. With mobile-based, the person who is collecting data entry directly to the form, and this is directly sent to the central level. So we have the level of errors is reduced. Data format. For data form with mobile base, we can collect data like videos, audio, and text, and also images. With paper, we cannot. We just have a text. The cost. For the cost, the first time we intend to use mobile-based data, we think that it will be more expensive than paper-based. But after 3 or 2 projects, we realize that it's less than paper-based because we use the same smartphone and tablet that for the 3 projects. So we evaluate the cost. If we were using papers, we realize that mobile-based is cheaper than paper-based. So let me show you 1 or 3 projects in which we implement mobile-based data collection. Dove is a project in which we use mobile-based data collection. It's a project epidemiological surveillance of cholera project in the far north of Cameroon. The objective was to detect any cholera epidemiologic and earlier stage in order to provide an effective response. To do this, we placed 30,000 of houses were placed under surveillance for 6 months. And nearly 312,000 notices were sent by SMS. Imagine if all these notices were to be sent by papers, and we will not be able to really observe the epidemiology situation. And one thing was that for surveillance, we need it to be at the real time. So we cannot use paper. It takes like 3 weeks to bring paper from the far north of Cameroon to the to the capital, which is Yaoundé. 3 weeks. And after this, we have to analyze data from the paper. So cholera takes just less than 4 days to kill some person. If we want to use paper, the epidemic will kill all people in that area. So the remote project aims to reduce the mortality of cholera in the town of Douala. And the objective was to identify the potential source of cholera in order to carry out a preventive action. So we use investigators from the area where the project was implemented, and we noticed that those investigators have to be trained on how to use a smartphone to send data to our level. So we could identify more than 1,500 water points and evaluate it. So what was the challenge? While designing the project, we realized that we will face some difficulties due to the context. One of the projects, whose Dove I presented before, was to be implemented in a remote area without internet access and continuous power supply. And the data were to be centralized and processed in real time. Even if some of the community relay in charge to collect data were used to, with the mobile phone, it will be a need to train them on how to use mobile phone data collection. And what we learned after this, the use of smartphone has greatly reduced the margin of error in the collection of data, since the data analyzed are those directly entered by the interviewer. The data collected are geolocated, which make verification very easy. The durability of data is ensured by the fact that the collected data are digital. Some of good practices in the design of ODK-based survey. Create two or three short survey form instead of one long, because of the time to collect data and the form of the smartphone we use is better than to create a short survey than to create a long. This is also because of the length of the SMS is limited. So we cannot send enough data by SMS. Implement at least 1 day of pre-testing, because many persons are using mobile phone but not to collect data. So we need to train people to use smartphone to collect data. And monitor permanently data sent from the field. So when you monitor permanently the data sent from the field, you can immediately react if some data is not coherent, because it's a real-time data collection. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dieffi, for your presentation. Now, Mr. Wael Attia will provide us an overview about the WFP experience in using mobile-based data collection for emergency programs.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity for being here and presenting the WFP experience in data collection. Well, just before starting the presentation, I'm just going to be tackling two issues here, not only data collection, but information management, because we think good information management can lead to good data collection, and no information management with data collection can be leading to misleading results. So I'm going to be presenting information management and data collection for the Food Security Analysis Service in WFP. So we're known as VAM. VAM is a network of 200 staff working worldwide in 70 countries, and 200 people out of 14,000 employees worldwide in 70 countries. Let me just pick up on one key statistics which will derive this presentation. So basically, WFP operations, 100% of the operations are supported by VAM assessments. In order to keep that target 100% that the operations worldwide are covered by VAM assessments, we need to have solid, correct data information management model. There should be no issues with the data validation, data gaps. We need to ensure the data is correct in order to feed into WFP operations. Our vision, we need to understand the vulnerabilities, the people who need food assistance by doing it quickly, doing it credible, doing it correct in the cost-efficient way. who we are and how we do it. So basically, we're different teams working in VAM. We have a geospatial team who looks at remote sensing. We have a market and economic analysis team who looks at price data, who looks at macroeconomic indicators and price volatility. And we have a food security assessment teams who look at assessments, food security indicators, such as food consumption score data. All these teams definitely work together in order to derive data to feed into WFP operations. Our data needs to answer 5 key questions. Who are the people food insecure? Where are they? How many they are? What do they need? And how do they get to that situation? If we are able to answer these 5 key questions, then we understood the vulnerability. So we start with the data collection. I mean, as my colleague correctly mentioned, data collection is doing it quickly, high quality, and in real time. This is the goal, the fundamental goal for data collection. Again, as mentioned, there are many tools out there for data collection, and we're not bound to use one data collection tool. There are many out there. GRASP is a tool that has been built in-house by VAM, which is based on an open source technology of Open Data Kit of Google, similar to Kobo Toolbox. Let me say that they're all open source tools using the same technology. However, we're not tightening a country office to be using one tool or another. It all depends on several factors. Example, online, offline capabilities. Some countries can be transmitting data by SMS. Other countries can be transmitting data by internet coverage. Others can be transmitting data offline whenever there's internet connection. Depends on the complexity of the form. If you're looking at a complex form, which form it's easy to use, which one is more complex to use, and most importantly is the user acceptance. Which country, which tool you're happy to use with. Because with the user acceptance, you can derive the acceptance of a country to do data collection. You may be encountering political issues to do data collection. So if you can convince your counterpart that you can do data collection and that how the tool is advanced and you can achieve the goals, then you can basically sell the concept of data collection. This is a quick map just to show you the diversity of the tools. As I was mentioning, there is no one tool being used. So this is the basic map showing you where we do data collection, which tool is used where. MDCA, this is another tool that is built in-house corporately by our IT division in WFP, which is called MDCA. The MDCA tool is, again, it follows the same capability, let me say, nothing new, that you're building your form, you're collecting data on the mobile device, you're centralizing it in one common server, having an API for the data sharing, and then you're doing real-time data visualization using a tool which is called Tableau. Now, any tool can be used. Let's look at the information management model, which is the toolbox that controls the data that we have been collecting. So the data comes in. That data can be coming from the tools that I mentioned, or can be coming in Excel, or can be coming in any format. As a fundamental rule, the data has to be centralized in one central location. Data centralization allows for tackling the issues on data security, data duplication, data redundancy, all these problems. And then we have a tool which does data governance. So there's a tool which is called the reporting engine. From my point of view, however, how advanced a data collection tool can be, there still can be some flaws in data collection that can be happening in the ground. Let's take for an example, someone is collecting a market price data at one point and sending it back to the server. So you're sending me the market price for this current week. Now I go back to the office and then someone else does a different round of data collection. So I'm getting the data twice at my server on 2 different rounds. So therefore, I need a backend in my server to validate if there's any duplicates, any outliers in the data. In the tools that we're defining in data collection, you can specify a minimum bound and a maximum bound. The price couldn't be below $2 and below $5. Let's say next month, Nigeria has an inflation and the price doesn't become $5 and becomes $7. So in that case, instead of calling the enumerator and changing the data collection tool to change the minimum and the maximum outliers, I can have a tool that detects that on the fly to clean it in the database to detect that the price couldn't be $7 and has to be $5. And there's a tool what we call the stats engine, which allows for quick data statistical analysis to be produced on the fly. And from there, the data dissemination starts. You have the API and the real-time data visualization. So the model is quick data collection, quick data analysis, and quick data visualization. Just a brief infrastructure. So when the data comes, we serve two different kinds of database technologies. We have a SQL database, which serves for the structured data. In VAM, we look so much into structured data, such as price data, food consumption score, rainfall patterns, NDVI. So this is a structured data. But we also serve non-structured data, such as the household level data that we collect in the field from our food security assessments. And both databases, thanks to the data collection mechanisms, everything is georeferenced. I would be able to spot any data on the map and produce and overlay my data. And from there, basically, there are many tools out there like Tableau and engines to show your data on the fly. Now, I would like to show 3 use cases of what we can do with the data that we have been collecting. First of all, this is an example of in Malawi, specifically in Ichizi city. So the first image shows you May 2014, the second one in May 2016, 2 years time period. The map shows you the distance between to move through travel to the health facility, where the purple area is the longest area, and the color yellow and orange is the less distance to move to a health facility. The map also has an overlay of where the beneficiaries are and the catchment areas. So thanks to data collection, so over time data collection is being pursued, so therefore new health centers has been built in order to reduce the travel time. So basically in this model, the data technology leveraged a methodology, which is a travel time distance model, in order to build additional health facilities to reduce the time of the traveling time. So here we use the data collection and an existing statistical methodology of the travel time distance to improve access to health facilities. The next one is in Gaza, complex emergency in August 2004. And here it's data collection leveraging a partnership with another technology provider. So basically what's happened here, 120,000 households has been interviewed in the August 2014 emergency. And the data has been collected. And as you can see on the map, you can see the geolocation of the areas on the GeoSDI, on the second one on the left, where the areas the data has been collected. However, from a satellite imagery, you just could see where the data has been collected, but since there was a horizontal fire shot on the buildings, you couldn't see them from the sideways. So the tool, the data collection tool, was able to capture a picture and upload it to the system as well. So you have a picture from the top and horizontally as well. Last, a crop field assessment. In Uganda, this year we'll be conducting our first crop field type assessment in order to collect information on crop type, irrigation, and seasonal timings. How are we going to do that? Basically, data collection will be collecting on the crop type, and the technology for geofencing the parameter where the crop has been harvested. This data is going to be overlaid on a map, and then the data will be validating through satellite imagery to control what data has been collected has been correct or not. This is another example of data collection and leveraging a technology to validate your data. Last is, again, the Turkey-Syria operation in WFP. The tool has been used, GRASP, for data collection. As we all may know, there was an issues between in data collection, there were always issues in emergency in delivering your hardware for data collection, how the hardware could be entered. So the hardware were transmitted through the borders. Data collection was conducted. Remote support was provided. Issues were arising from the government how to accept the tool, but these were all resolved by training and by basically showing the data that has been collected. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Now our colleague from IFAD, Ms. Rich Pelrine.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My presentation, I think, is a little bit different from the two which have preceded it. The two which have preceded it kind of showcase what the technology is capable of doing. I'd like to talk a little bit about the experience that I had actually using the technology. and just to give us some food for thought. I may move through some of these slides a bit fast because I think a lot of the how-to has already been covered with your permission. So at the moment, I'm not only the lead regional economist, but also the, sorry? Yeah, it's okay, thank you. But also the interim country program manager for Nigeria. And there we go. Okay, last year, WCA received some supplemental budget to support project designs. Effectively, in the WCA division, I'm responsible for overseeing designs. We wanted to do some baseline surveys to better inform how we would invest in some upcoming value chain investments. The studies used a statistical sampling model to map key commodity value chains targeted by the proposed projects, and further included household data for the targeted geographies. The intended outputs of the surveys were, one, a coherent and quantitative picture of who buys what from whom and when, the revenues, costs, and gross margins of input suppliers, producers, cooperatives, transporters, processors, wholesalers, and retailers. Effectively, we wanted to know, before IFAD made an investment, really, what did the market look like in these 4 countries for the commodities that we wanted to invest in? Because, for example, if we find that the price of inputs for maize production are extremely high, that tells us that the supply of inputs is very low, and then the economic logic says, okay, if you're designing a project, invest there. Okay, so this was really what we wanted to find out. This is not new science. This is something that I was doing in the private sector before I worked for IFAD. WFP and VAM, they have the GRASP system. And this is my first slide on the GRASP system. But I can tell you, and this is a key thing to raise, prior to joining IFAD, I used to do a lot of survey work in Africa for private banks interested in investing in agriculture. And routinely, I would have teams of 20, 25 enumerators, quality control people, reams and reams of paper, all sorts of statistical sampling models and testing questionnaires and all of the stuff that IOE normally does, I suppose. And a lot of time crunching numbers to find out quantitatively what a value chain looked at, so I could advise private banking clients where to invest their loan portfolios. Quality control was expensive and it was tedious. So when I heard about the GRASP system and VAM and WFP, I went to see them. GRASP has certain key features. They've already been covered. Data consolidation is automatic. Predefined ranges of survey responses reduces errors. The data is safer. You can rapidly change questionnaires if you find your questionnaire isn't working very well and populate that through the system. Gives you pinpoint georeferences of where the data was collected. It promised to reduce the tedium, the human resource costs, and increase the accuracy. So all of this sounded good. Appreciation. I'm going to read this one. I placed the slide here because it's important to note before discussing what went well or otherwise. One, WFP was really responsive, helpful, and fantastic in every aspect of explaining and supporting this effort. We used their software, we used their application, but they were not shy or difficult at giving us help and assistance to really get the best possible experience out of this. And speaking for IFAD, if I may, I really appreciated the collaboration we got with WFP. IFAD's ICT department was also excellent and quickly understood why we were doing what we were doing was important and invested their time kindly and patiently in trying to support the outcomes. And our country program managers in the field were also really supportive of this process. Now the experience. The system performed as advertised. Questionnaires were easily updated, responses were limited to realistic parameters, data was consolidated on a consultant's laptop. All of these are highly appreciated. Nonetheless, we underestimated many of the complexities in using electronic data collection. And I would say we underestimated this. We felt like planning data collection could have been improved. Until now, we've not been able to get access to a server allowing data to flow in and out from IFAD, UNICC, or another source. So in spite of the fact that we had all this wonderful data, we didn't really have anywhere to store it. And in order to have somewhere to store it, we would have needed to start probably 4 to 6 months ahead of actually doing the survey work. So for us, being able to actually use this application would have required us to know that we wanted to use this application well in advance. Training of enumerators was another issue. Training people on a paper-based system is fairly straightforward. Trying to find the word for, I don't know what it is, slide. You know, when you have a tablet PC, you say slide in French or Arabic. This has its own challenges. Plus the fact that, as the colleague from WFP noted, you know, the choice in applications really has to be driven by what people are also familiar with. And in our case, almost all of our enumerators were not familiar with much, and this became another challenge. And because there were many fewer quality control staff, well, questionnaires are easy to change, because we said, well, we're using technology, so we'll use fewer people. We actually, frankly, got a lower quality of data because we had fewer quality control staff. So this, again, was a learning. We could have had improvements at startup as well. GRASP has descriptive literature, and the WFP VAM team is fairly competent, or very competent, I would say, in the application. Nonetheless, the database issue that I mentioned before, we didn't really plan for storing the data anywhere, and I got a very quick lesson from IFAD ICT about data security and what we could keep here and what we couldn't. And that's not a criticism in any way, but it's something, if we had known we were doing it and started a year earlier, we would have been better off. Okay. So the outcome. WCA, that's the West and Central Africa Division, has received 4 reports from the consultants hired to execute the baseline surveys. Raw data is okay, but suffered from formatting shortcomings. I can live with that. Analytical data is better than we're used to having, but still suffers from a lot of low quality input, which was not arrested by quality control. And again, this is because we didn't have the number of quality control staff in the process that we would have done had we had a paper-based system. We weren't as able to head some of these things off. All in all, I'd give the experience a 4 out of 6. With some better planning, better testing, and more experience, this would have been better. This is a presentation I gave to IOE, I think at the end of last year, the very beginning of this year. I added one more slide on analysis, and I've actually added a couple of bits of food for thought, with your permission. I haven't gone to my 10 minutes yet. While we like the system for its features, the time required in busy lives of staff to ensure that the technology could be used effectively was discouraging. I read an article about 2 weeks ago. It was written by this really hyper salesman who can sell anything to anybody. And one of the things he said was, the problem with certain salespeople is they think that they're selling a drill. But actually what they're selling is they're selling a 50-millimeter hole. Because the person buying it doesn't want the drill, they want the 50-millimeter hole. And for us, doing our baseline surveys, we wanted the outcome in the analysis. We didn't really want the technology as beautiful and wonderful as it is. I mean, and I think it is beautiful and wonderful, but really we were just looking for the outcome. In subsequent data collection, in Nigeria earlier this year, for example, we reverted, here I'm watching my 2 fellow presenters, we reverted to a paper-based system because it was easier than teaching a new system. And it was simply, it was a startup time issue. We knew we needed to do a baseline survey. We had the money to do the baseline survey. Everything came into place very quickly. And we knew we couldn't set up a server because that would take 6 months. We knew that we couldn't recruit everybody we needed to learn the system, but we knew that using university staff from a university in Nigeria, we could quickly get our outcome, and we did. It was relatively easier to find competent human resources to do paper surveys versus investing in pre-planning time and effort in the electronic system. Ultimately, the outcome, the analyzed data, is what we need, and that's what we need. How we get it is driven by finding the simplest and fastest method to get there. Speaking as an economist, you know, the trade-off for me is the cost of collecting the paper-based data or electronic data in terms of not only financial cost but time and tedium. So it's I was listening to the two gentlemen, and I think if we had to monitor an ongoing health crisis, if we had to monitor an ongoing humanitarian crisis, and we were collecting and analyzing data on the same target population on a regular basis, monthly, quarterly, even annually, all this learning curve makes a lot of sense. For baseline surveys, where you're going to basically train enumerators to use an application one-off, not very sure it made a lot of sense. That's what I have for you this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, for your presentation. As we saw that we have 3 different experiences from different type of users. And we have some positive experiences using the ICT technologies, and one experience that it demonstrates that it's not always viable to use the ICT technology to collect data, depending on the geographic location, the social environment, the capacity of the people. And so always we have to see to use these tools in a wise way, depending on the output and outcomes that we need. I would like to open the floor for any questions. Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Alexis Titkowski. I'm with Survey CTO. And you all touched a little bit on data security, and my question has to do with data security features and practices. As you're transitioning from paper to digital, I'm wondering how you're translating your ethical practices from paper-based data collection to digital data collection. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Hamayoun Sultan, Senior Impact Evaluation Officer, Islamic Relief Worldwide. Again, thank you very much for the very, very useful presentations. The question I have is that we have been piloting technology within Islamic Relief. I piloted EpiCollect last year. We're using Kobo Toolbox at the moment. One of the question I have is related to one of the learnings that I got as well, that when I use paper-based evaluations, it allows a lot greater flexibility. So if someone gives me an answer, I can go off at a tangent. With technology at the moment, at least with my relatively limited knowledge, I'm a little fixed with it. So I've got the question on my Kobo Collect, and if someone gives me an answer that I want to move on from, I can't. And so I can't completely move away from paper yet, because I need to, so if someone tells me I need to go off at a tangent, record that data, then come back. And so I was wondering if you had any sort of experience from that. Because Richard, I think you mentioned earlier as well that I think it was GRASP, rapidly updating questionnaires. So I suppose the question I had about that was how rapidly? Are we talking sort of 5-6 minutes, or are we talking 30 seconds almost? Sort of, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Nicola Hobby. I work with a software vendor, BAO Systems. This question is actually for Richard specifically. I'm very sorry to hear about your unfortunate situation of not being able to access your data at the end of all that effort. What specifically was the format of the data in and the database, and why was it so difficult for you to put this up onto a server for you to access? And now looking back on this situation, what sort of learning do you have to share with us in terms of making sure that that part and step in the process is sort of included, what questions need to be asked, et cetera? Thank you.
We take one more question, and then we give to the colleague time to answer, please.
Hello, and my name is Katinka Koke, and I work for UNITA, the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Thank you very much for the 3 interesting presentations. I have 2 very short questions. One is also related to the resistance to change and to adopt new behavior and the use of new technologies. Do you have any action plan in mind, any ideas how we can actually cope with this resistance to change and actually facilitate change management in our different organizations, and also cope with the transition costs this might imply? And second is, do you believe really paper and mobile technology is complementary in the field of data collection particularly? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a varied questions as varied presentations also on type. So please.
Maybe I can start, and my colleagues can argue or agree with my with my perspective. The question from Islamic Relief, and it's a good question. Are paper-based systems more flexible? And to me, the answer is yes. But I want to be very careful, because I thought about this while I was listening to the other 2 presentations. I find that the study that we did in Nigeria in February of this year was paper-based. But what we invested in, instead of investing in learning the technology, was we invested in 4 really competent economists from a Nigerian university who understood what the survey was for. They got excited about it. They coached the enumerators very well, and we got a very excellent outcome. Now, if you're doing a one-off baseline survey, you couldn't really do better than that. I mean, having more data wouldn't really help you more than having high-quality data and probing questions and this sort of thing. However, if it's repetitive data collection on the same group of people where you're using it in a monitoring function, no, I think updating your questionnaires normally over the course of a day, somebody calls in and says this isn't working very well, the form is changed, and then that form is sent out to all of the enumerators. But I mean, if you're really looking for baseline, I'm actually thinking yes, using the paper system with the most competent possible leadership is the way to go, and that also speaks a bit to the question: are the 2 approaches complementary? Yes, they are, but again, you use the right tool for the right objective. I just want to address a little bit the data storage issue. The data storage issue has nothing to do with the format of the data, I have to say. And to be honest, I don't have the technical expertise to even tell you what the format of the data is. But what I can tell you is that IFAD is a UN agency. We have security protocols. ICT people take it very, very seriously when you want to start storing data coming in from a bunch of mobile users in West Africa on our systems, and that's completely legitimate. It caught me off guard. I think it caught all of us who were engaged in the process off guard. The next question was, well, for $10 you can store your data anywhere. You can get 40 terabytes for $10, and you see these sorts of things, and then all the ICT colleagues say, oh, that's not safe. You can't do that. How do we know they're any good? How do we know the data won't be corrupted? So it was these sorts of questions that really impeded our process of storage and analysis locally. I mean, the data was actually held on a laptop computer because that was the best that we could do. And the learning from this is that we need to learn to be a bit more flexible, or we need to anticipate that these sorts of things are going to happen more and more frequently in the coming years. Sorry, if you want to continue, Wael.
Thank you. I'm just going to pick up on the same point. I mean, WFP is like the sister UN agency to IFAD, and we follow the same UN security, to answer the security question, we follow the same UN security protocols in terms of firewalls, server NATing, what's hitting the server, what's not. So basically, we are, as a business unit in WFP, we are in charge of the data collection, but in terms of the data hosting, and it's managed by a corporate IT department who is responsible for the data security, any cyber attacks, any firewall issues. Especially that this data collected is a household level data, so they are in charge of maintaining the data security. So we don't, it's not falling in our plate. There was one question regarding the change management. Basically, it's a matter of marketing. It's a matter of selling how, how timely is it, how cost efficient it is. So from my point of view, for me, if I would like to convince a manager to move into that task, is basically to try the tool in a non-context related. From my point of view, if I have an emergency, I wouldn't go and deploy a tool first time that no one have seen. So I would just do a pilot test. What we do, basically, we go to a country office, do a pilot test, show them with a small sample how it works. It stays in their mind. We're back. Emergency hits. They immediately give us a call back. We would like to try that solution. So it's a matter of try it in a non-context related environment and leave it to them. And then basically that's how it goes. I mean, this is from my experience how it moves, yeah. Please,
Okay. I'll add just on data security. Since we are using SMS to transmit data, the data is storage on the offline server. So that server is not accessible via internet. And the only way to access this data is the analyze result. So what is on internet, on website, is the result of the analysis. And the data at the central level is on a offline server. So, I mean, the security data is not accessible to person out of the office where data is supposed to be analyzed.
We have a room for a couple of questions, or three, okay. We can begin from here, please.
Is Emily. I work for Oxfam, and it's been my job, particularly over the past few years, to get as many of the 90 countries on board with mobile data collection as possible. And I'm interested to know about, in your organizations, whether you have a centralized strategy for these kind of things. So your point, Richard, about it's a one-off survey, it's costly, it takes time. I completely agree with you. And what we've been doing is getting the countries up and running so that their general M&E is all digital where appropriate, and obviously in some places it's not, so that when our impact evaluators need to actually go and do a separate kind of evaluation, it's easy for them to pick up the hardware. There is a bank of enumerators that are already trained and worked with us, and we've since narrowed down, and we specifically use 2 softwares for data collection depending on the areas that it's in. So I was just wondering whether there is any centralized strategy within your organizations to really look at this holistically so that it can be scalable and sustainable, because we found that time is saved, data quality is improved because of the automated quality checks you can put in place, and costs are saved once the hardware has already been purchased.
Yes, over there, please. There, yes, and then.
Is it on? Yes. Hello, hi. Thank you very much for your presentations today. My name is Dania Chudakov from Proximity International. I had a question mostly directed towards the gentleman from WAM about your experience using digital data collection platforms in insecure contexts such as Syria. And I'd be very grateful if you could speak a bit about the security dynamics around using digital data collection platforms in insecure settings and some of the protocols that you've had in place and experiences in general for us as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, the last question here, please, because the time is pressing.
Okay. Thank you. My second question here comes back to data protection, really. I mean, internally within Islamic Relief, we've been having discussions recently about country-specific data protection and the possibility of countries like India, for example, maybe saying that any data collected within country cannot leave the country. And so the issues around that, as to sort of if you're collecting data centrally, then if it can't leave the country, how do you deal with that? That kind of thing. So if you've thought about that.
Yes, please. Yes.
So I'll just start with the question for the emergency Syria context. So I'm glad that question is raised, because in that situation, I'm speaking from the VAM, from my unit now, there's another project that we're using to do data collection, and it's not anymore physical devices data collection that you do face-to-face interviews. We have a project that's called MVAM. M stands for mobile VAM. So this is where you contact people basically on their mobiles. So, and it's through different modalities, either through SMS or by IVR technology. So you get a robot call basically from a server asking you, what is your food security situation? Press 1 if that, press 2 if that. What is your coping strategies? What are the food prices? And data is pushed back to the server. So that mechanism works perfectly and is working very nicely in a situation that you couldn't send someone to the field with a mobile device to interview a question face to face. It involves a lot of issues because you need to work with the network operators in order and establish a partnership with them, including the government, in order to get access to the mobile phone numbers of the beneficiaries so you can have your server contacting them on the fly. So in that regard, that context is working very nicely, that you can reach them without having any deployment happening over there. I'll be happy to share later on more details on that project. It's on our website, on the VAM website. There's a specific website for this MVAM project, which has all the details how it works. But we find this as a good solution for data collection when it's not possible to reach via face-to-face, basically for emergency. It was used in Ebola, when Ebola crisis, when there was no way that people can fly and enter areas. Iraq, Yemen, Syria. So this is where the MVAM project is currently active and data collection is happening now. Yeah. Okay, for the question on data security, it's true. Data is becoming, data responsibility is becoming a buzzword nowadays. Who owns the data? And it doesn't mean open data means that everyone can have access to the data at all. So we differentiate that by calling two different kinds of data sets: raw data and aggregated data. So if the raw data couldn't leave the country for any reason, then we have statistical tools that aggregates the data and anonymizes the data, and then at least we should have access to that data. So instead of not getting anything, not getting at all the raw data at all, you should be having access to what we call the aggregated data. Summary. Yeah, exactly. You could have access to the summary data, what I mean by aggregated, or if you're lucky, you can get access to the data in an anonymized format, hiding the identifiers such as first name, last name, age, and mobile phone numbers. So in a way, it becomes as a bargaining technique. If you couldn't get access to the data, try to get access to the summary data, or try to get the data in a way that is leashing out the identifiers of the households. Yeah.
Well, we reached the end of our sessions. As we already see, this subject have different point of view, and we see that there are many challenges that faces the institutions. It's from the human resource trainings, time constraints the project, the financial issue, the reliability of collection of data, and therefore, for each institution and maybe for each case, they can find if it's possible to apply the ICT solutions for M&E, or maybe to leave it for later on phase when the infrastructure and the capacity is ready to use this technology. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, patiently and for being involved. It's now we have a lunch break. We have reserved space upstairs in the cafeteria for the participants, and we also have quite a few restaurants outside here. So we have quite a bit of time to go around and take the food of your choice. So if you want, we have a list of restaurants. We can just give them to you. You can check out where they are and have a good lunch. Thank you.